I'm Gina, and I'm going to do the summary review of Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, chapters 17 through 20. These chapters start off with Colonial Grangerford saves Huck, who introduces himself as George Jackson, by these dogs he's about to get attacked by. And he brings him back to his place, and he cleans him up, and he tells him that he can stay with him as long as he needs to once they made sure that he wasn't a Shepherdson. The Shepherdson were the Grangerfords' enemies. They don't really know what started it, but over the past few years, lots of them have been dying, and they even go to the same church where they have to hold rifles between their knees during the preachings. While Huck was staying at the Grangerfords' house, he was looking around, and he would see lots of poetry and stories written by their youngest daughter, Emmeline. And it was ironic because all of her poems and stories were about death, and she was now dead as well. One day after church, a slave wanted to go show Huck something in the woods, and he ran into Jim there. And what happened was Jim had followed Huck there, but he was afraid to say anything because he thought he was going to get caught. But the next day, Huck and Jim went right back to the river, and they were traveling. And while they were traveling, they ran into these two guys who were trying to run away from trouble. One of them had been caught drinking, and the other one had been selling toothpaste that was tearing off people's enamels. And so they were just trying to leave that town, and they decided to help the men out. And soon enough, the men, they try to trick Jim and Huck into believing that they were royalty just to get better treatments from them. And the men, they questioned Huck about Jim, and they told him, he asked why they were with him. And Jim just said that he was an orphan, and Huck explained that that's why they had to travel at night. And once they came to a town, they try to say that they were pirates, so they wouldn't have to go to the revivals, and they took over a newspaper company, and they started printing away newspapers with the reward for the capture of Jim, so they wouldn't only have to travel at night. During chapters 17 through 20, Huck starts to grow a lot as a person and mature, because while he's living at the Grangerfords' house, he goes through a lot of experiences, and he's impacted in a way that he would have never been still living at the widow Douglas's house. Emmeline's work brings Huck an uneasy feeling, and he starts feeling empathy towards her and her death. Emmeline was a young girl. She was only 14 when she died, and during her short life, she wrote stories about men and women and children who had died. And Huck just thought that it was a real shame that no one wrote anything about her now that she was gone. And so he tried through, and through his response, we see internal growth in Huck. Also, Buck brings Huck over the edge after he finds out about his death, and it's just too much for him to handle. And he's no longer naive, and now he's just mature enough to start feeling empathy towards other people besides himself. So that was the review and analysis for chapters 17 through 20.